Thank you, Mr. Yardley. Very important reminder at the end that with all the technologies, it's still the human beings that you need to have on the ground working through so many of these. So I appreciate that. This has been a great discussion, really. I thank you all. We clearly have identified where these vulnerabilities are if we were to have a significant crisis and this whole issue of Blackstart. Where's the vulnerability? Well, it's clearly in, are you able to test as you need? Are you able to communicate during the time of the disaster? The vulnerability of being reliant on a single fuel source, just the cost, the people, the trained individuals. So again, very, very good conversation. I want to start my questions off about the reliance on a single fuel source for Blackstart. So the joint NERC and FERC report that many of you have cited cautions us against reliance on a single fuel for Blackstart capabilities. But do we have a sense as to how many Blackstart power plants actually rely on a single fuel source? And if we can identify that, what progress are we making then towards diversification for multiple fuel sources? And Mr. Ortiz, Dr. Ortiz, since you raised it, and Mr. Ott, you've been very involved with it. If you could speak to that. And then also, I'm curious to know more how hydropower can play into this fuel source as that alternative, as Senator Cantwell has mentioned. You know, she's blessed with extraordinary hydro resources, but when you think about a fuel source, a ready fuel source that's just sitting there with a level of availability that perhaps you don't see with outside fuel sources like storage of diesel or gas. So if you could speak to that, both of you. Go ahead, Dr. Ortiz.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chairman. By way of introduction, let me note that our study, one of the key recommendations was that an entity identify areas where its Blackstart generators depend on a single fuel source,
okay,
and look toward options for mitigating the potential risk of that fuel source not being available. There are a number of ways in which to do this. They could include firm contracts with alternative fuel sources, as well as working with local regulators to ensure appropriate air permits for, say, diesel or other fuels to be used. Unfortunately, with respect to specific resources and specific plans, given that our study drew upon the anonymous participation of a number of utilities, I can't speak to any specific cases. However, in general, the study team, in looking at the actions of some of the best practices at the participating utilities, saw that those that had identified this risk had been able to identify means in which to mitigate it.
Mr. Ott?
Thank you, Senator Murkowski. The issue, we have raised the issue, and certainly talking about the issue of single fuel dependence, not only on Blackstart, but more globally. And I think, so what we've addressed is we've started a process to have a discussion with our stakeholder community. I don't think it's a widespread issue, meaning 50%, but there is some vulnerability there. And so we are addressing it through our request for proposals that we issue for Blackstart services. We are addressing it through discussions with stakeholders. The reality check is it becomes more expensive when you ask for more fuel diversity, but certainly units like hydro and other diverse units, whether it be the combination of solar and battery, that's still experimental, but it's those types of things that will help reduce the cost. And similarly with other types of fuel security questions, as long as you identify the service and don't fall into the trap of saying I want a specific technology and I want to save a specific type of plant, then it becomes a little less expensive. But certainly we're on it. I would say certainly it is a vulnerability, but it's not a widespread vulnerability.
But it's a vulnerability that you are highlighting and not directing, these are your preferred alternatives. It's what works for you within the region for that particular utility.
And what's key is we're stating the requirement is fuel security and a diverse, no dependency, no single point of failure. So the requirement's not you have to be oil or you have to be gas or you have to be hydrogen. I think that helps lower the expense because you're allowing more diverse resources to come in and provide the service, and the service is security of supply, essentially. And for Blackstart, we don't want to have a single point of, if this system's going down and you have very few options, you don't want that single point of failure to rear its head in a surprise. And certainly we are on that and we are taking action.
Appreciate that.